our Chief Community Impact Officer, Angie Tretton, to have a conversation about grant making. Angie leads the grant making work and our committee here at the Community Foundation of Greater Des Moines, and we're really excited to tap into her expertise to share with our affiliate network. So thanks for joining us, Angie.
Thanks for having me. I love an opportunity to talk with the affiliate community.
Yeah, great. So I have a few questions about different areas of the grant making cycle that I thought we could go through. So first, from a process standpoint, are there ways to simplify the grant application for organizations applying?
Oh, I think that's a great question. Our philosophy with our Community Foundation of Greater Des Moines grant making is we're not looking for dissertations, we're looking for clarity. And one of the ways that you can consider doing that is really realizing that less is more. So we've really transitioned to the questions that ask the basics. What's the executive summary of what it is that you want to accomplish, right? We all remember the Cliff Notes back in the day, but that's really what we're looking for in terms of just tell us what it is in your words, paint the picture in our mind's eye so we can see what it is that the project you're proposing is going to do in our community. Which leads me to really what I think is probably the most powerful question that we ask is, what difference is this going to make in our community? Not necessarily just for the organization, but what is the difference it's going to make in our community, and how do you know that that's something our community needs? So for us, that's what we're asking them to reflect on a community plan or a visioning process or something like that. But I don't know exactly how to define it other than ask for the executive summary, don't get more than you need, and really have them tie back to the impact on community. And from those kinds of reflections, you're really going to get a good sense about whether or not you are the right grant-making investor in that particular project to move your community forward.
I love that. Collecting the right information you need to make those decisions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So from an awarding the grants perspective and kind of the guidelines that go along with that, a lot of our affiliates are granting for capital projects, a lot for programmatic expenses, but none are really doing operational grant making. So why might an affiliate open up their guidelines to allow for that type of grant making?
Well, in many previous conversations, actually, our grant-making committee had wrestled with, do we do too much capital? And we did a deep dive into where our grant investments landed, and we were about half in terms of physical infrastructure building of something, and also investment in the people or the programs to make things happen. Now, our guidelines would say we don't necessarily invest in general operating funding. However, we invest in the people and the resources and the materials that it ultimately takes to impact programs and to deliver on programs in the community. So you could argue that that in and of itself, in many ways, is an investment into general operating funding. One of the great tools that I've seen, and certainly something that you could share with the affiliate community, is encouraging the nonprofit organizations to think about how they even present a budget to you. And there's a wonderful free online tool that actually is an Excel document where you can take a project budget and really see and ask for the overlay of what the general operations looks like in order to execute on that particular project. So that could be a really powerful thing for the grant making committees of the affiliate community foundations to think about, because at the end of the day, it's going to take people, it's going to take other types of resources in order to make those projects successful. And it's oftentimes projects that we find inside of those capital campaign builds. So really thinking about it more holistically might be a good way to approach this idea of how you can invest in the people to make things happen.
Absolutely. I'll make sure to share that resource that Angie mentioned and appreciate you sharing kind of our grant making committee's journey and discussion around that. Finally, what are ways or ideas on how to connect with local nonprofit organizations?
Oh, great question. I'll often describe the role of my role and even the role of our staff team in the Community Impact Department as community pollinators. I do love me a good visual, but I also think the idea of community pollination really is what helps grant making become successful. And that is really rooted in understanding and hearing and learning directly from the nonprofits on the ground, and taking those ideas and sharing that information across the community and really seeing what, not to be cliche, but seeing what really blossoms in our region. In order to get to those building relationships with those nonprofits, we actually have as part of our strategic goals a certain number of conversations with nonprofit leaders and board members that both we know well and also those that we don't know well. And we hold ourselves accountable to learning from nonprofits. Again, they're on the ground doing the work. Without them, our philanthropic dollars don't make that difference that we all want to see in our community. So I would really encourage people, whether you're a volunteer or a staff member, to have a cup of coffee with a nonprofit leader. It could be a board member, it could be an executive director. And one of my favorite questions that I would encourage you to ask is, what's your biggest dream in the next 3 years? I love asking that question because you can see people's imagination, you can see what they have in their vision, not just for their organization, but for their community. And you can learn a lot by taking that reflection and asking and backing up to say, well, what might it take for you to get there? And there sometimes is where you have these really trusting conversations to help find great places for grant investments too.
Sure, yeah, that's great. I love that community pollinator. I'm gonna start
Great visual.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Angie, for joining us today and sharing your expertise with us. Feel free to reach out to our team if you have any questions about grant making. Don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to be a resource for you.